recently there's a funny story. I'm not gonna tell any specifics to protect people part of it, but one of my friends is not that much into self development. Like he's not that like I don't know. And I was like, yeah, you should try it, man. Like it's really good. I love it. And he was like, I don't know, man. Like, and then he came. Okay, and he was like, okay, tell me. And I started teaching like all the stuff that I learned, and I was very excited. But in like 15 minutes, I see this face expression of like this. He was absolutely and totally disinterested, and I was like, "What's wrong?" And then he didn't tell me. He left, and then it's so funny. So after 2 months only, I hear what went wrong. And the conclusion of that conversation was that like you cannot teach something that took years for you to learn in a day to someone else. It's just not possible. And I tried to do that, and it wasn't successful, and it wasn't good. I'll tell you another story just to drive this lesson deeply because stories make us remember. It's about a cowboy and a preacher. Perhaps you have heard this story, but like one Sunday morning, preacher arrived at small country church to find that only one person had shown up for the service. A cowboy sitting in the front pew. The preacher considered canceling the service due to the low attendance rate. But he decided to ask the cowboy, "Well, I'm not sure if it's worth proceeding," the preacher said. "You're the only one here. What do you think?" The cowboy replied, "Preacher, I'm just a simple man. But," he said, I'm just a cowboy. But if I went out to feed my cattle and only one cow showed up, I'd, I'd still feed it." Taking this as a sign to proceed, the preacher launched into his sermon. He preached with great enthusiasm, covering every point in extensive detail. He went on for 2 hours, delivering one of the longest sermons of his career. After the marathon sermon, the preacher approached the cowboy and asked, "So, what do you think of the sermon?" The cowboy paused and said, "Well, like I said, I'm just a simple cowboy. But if I went out to feed my cattle and only one cow showed up, I'd feed it. But, but I wouldn't dump the whole load on it." And the moral of the story is like, you can't dump the whole load to someone who could not take it. Applications of this lesson is be mindful of your audience and quality over quantity. Engagement matters. You want to make them engage, understand their background, their context, give the necessary context, don't give too much. Simple, small steps to excellence. And the steps, wait a minute. Yeah, before you communicate, before you teach anything, be sure to communicate them that, hey, do you want me to teach you? And they're like, yeah. So then you can only teach. Like if you try to teach someone without asking that, it's like kind of like there's some friction there. Like, what do you think teaching me? You know, if there's voluntary effort to learn, then it's like, yeah, good. So steps to improvement is that make sure someone, first of all, wants you to teach them something by their free will before you teach them. and then understand their level of skill in that thing you are teaching to them before you start teaching. And when you start teaching, start telling them the context and why it's important. Then teach them smaller steps than they expect and give them actionable, easy steps to start improving on that skill.